What's up, everybody? Welcome to it's June 3rd here. We have made it to the first week of June, week 22 of Water Cooler's year. We have had a heck of a time with these things, showing you guys what the questions look like in a given week, and we had a really fun week. So let's just jump right into it. Let's see what was going on. So, as I mentioned, it's June 2022, week number 1. This is Water Cooler Trivia. My name is Eli Robinson. I am the Chief Trivia Officer here at Water Cooler. We are a company that provides a weekly trivia game to companies all over the world for the purposes of increasing camaraderie, connectivity, etc. We write a brand new game every week for everybody to take a look and play with your coworkers, see who wins, etc. It's very fun. We have a 4-week free trial. You can always check it out at watercoolertrivia.com. And always chat me or send me an email or find me on TikTok or whatever, maybe if you have any questions. So let's jump into it. 498 users this week, average score of 7.3. That was a little bit higher than last week. Ultimately, there were very few 1s, 2s, and 3s this week, which is, I think, why the average ended up being higher. The median of 7 was the same as last week. However, when we see the breakdown across the entire week, there were very few 9s and 10s relative to previous weeks, and we'll kind of show why that may be true. The answer kind of lies in what happened with question number 10. But otherwise, this is the kind of distribution that we ultimately want to look for. The vast majority of people getting 6 or more, with a lot of people getting 7 or more. Would like to see more perfect 10s, honestly. Like, I don't think it should be that hard to get a perfect 10. When we look at what happened with question number 10 here in a little bit, we'll see. But this is what the breakdown looked like for this week. All right, so let's get to question number 1. Once again, we have a 10-question quiz around here. Question number 1, seasonal analogy. In the northern hemisphere, June is to the summer solstice as what chilly month is to the winter solstice. So for those of you who haven't kind of found our quizzes before, we like to open up the quizzes with 3 to 4 questions that are arguably gettable by everyone. Our kind of internal metric that we shoot for is 95% correct. So pretty surprised to see this as 89% correct. Certainly lower than we would have expected. Our quizmaster, John Paul, was the one who ultimately suggested this analogy format, which I really like because it's very clean. However, I'm starting, after we've seen the results here, I think that maybe the analogy format kind of like got people a little tripped up. The original version of the question was something about like the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year. As I've kind of talked about before, we try to write questions that are relevant to what's going on in the world. And so, okay, June, the solstice, the longest day of the year. So the answer, of course, to this question is December. Just a little bit surprised that we wouldn't have seen December kind of show up as a 95%er. But that's okay. 89% isn't that bad. Question number 2. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. The big 3 U.S. commercial broadcast television networks are CBS, NBC, and what Disney-owned third network. So lots of clues here. It's easy as 1, 2, 3, of course, is a clue. We included an image with the question, so that is of the Jackson 5, which one of their big hits was ABC. Big 3 is an interesting kind of historical term that's been used for television network, going back to when there was no such thing as cable. Arguably now, if you include Fox, there are 4, like big 4, but like the big 3 historically have always been CBS, NBC, and ABC. It's possible that including Disney was actually a little bit of a red herring. I would assume that most people don't know that Disney owns ABC. I don't know. But 89% correct. Once again, we're going for like a 95% correct rate on this, so a little bit disappointed that we were below that. Lots of TV networks were the wrong answers, a lot of CNNs and Fox and all the whatever. I thought the Jackson 5 clue on top, like it's like interesting to think about what the question would be without the Jackson 5, what the answer would be, but like I would have thought the Jackson 5 clue would have put this one over the top, but 89% correct for ABC. Question number 3, it makes me want to dribble, televised by the answer to number 2. For the 20th straight season, the NBA Finals begin on June 2nd. What does the N or the A stand for in NBA? So a couple things going on here with this question. Number 1, we of course, if you makes me want to dribble, is from a very viral TikTok thing going on right now. It's from a dance challenge, I guess, that theoretically is happening. The second thing you should see is a little bit of laddering between the questions. So televised by the answer to number 2. In the future, we'll consider doing things like laddering entire games or sections of games or whatever it may be. But this is the first kind of experiment we've had by giving a meta clue, a clue within the game to another question. The most interesting thing here is we tend to ask quite a few or think about asking like, what we might call or questions, right? So there are two correct answers. So in this situation, the answer is either national or association. It was really, really shocking how many people put both. I don't know if it's an extra credit thing or it's an insecurity thing because like, oh, maybe if I get one right and one wrong, maybe it's just showing off. I don't know, but a ton of people ended up putting, National Basketball Association or whatever it may be, when very clearly we were looking for one or the other. 98% correct. Love to see it. It's harder. Sports and games questions are very frequently either too easy or too hard. This one was probably too easy, but like I said, we go for those 98% corrects whenever we can get them. Question number 4. Hopefully you haven't lost that love and feeling. Tom Cruise is soaring to the big screen in a Top Gun sequel. Its subtitle is What Rebellious Alias of his character Pete Mitchell. So we talked about using a term like nickname or call sign. We ended up going with alias. 93% correct, which is awesome. We call this a context question. Oh, wait a second. I didn't put on my music here. I just forgot that we want to get a little background music going on here. We call this a context question, which is that if I would have asked this question a year ago, I don't think we would get anywhere near 93% correct. So this is a situation where the world has changed, and the way that the world has changed has been that this movie was released, or is being released as the #1 movie in the world by far, may have in fact saved the movie, the theater industry single-handedly. So that's what you have here. This Pete Mitchell, of course, his alias is Maverick. 93% correct. Very impressed with America. But like I said, this is kind of the zeitgeist of what's going on right now. So that's what you get. All right, number 5. Far and away the most popular keyboard layout in the English language has what 6-letter name after the letters in the top row read from left to right? So this is an interesting question when you think about including the last clause. So imagine instead that it simply read, far and away the most popular keyboard layout in the English language has what 6-letter name? You'd get quite a few people to get that right. However, in some ways, it ends up being very exclusionary of a question because, like, the type of person who's going to know the answer to that is just going to know it, and there's really no hope for anybody else. So 94%, when you basically, all you have to do, in order to play this game, you have to type in free response. So basically everybody would have a keyboard, and unless you have a Dvorak keyboard or some sort of other goofy foreign language keyboard, whatever it may be, in all likelihood you have a QWERTY keyboard, so QWERTY. I really enjoyed this misspelling question that we had. So we got QWERTY, quartz, and QWERTY. So I don't know, we don't count spelling here at Water Cooler, but this is probably one where we did or we needed to. The idea of somebody writing QUERTY is just very entertaining to me. You're so close, but no cigar, if you would. All right, number 6. Now that's some high quality H2O. What's the common name for the chemical substance dihydrogen monoxide? Okay, so there's this thing in the world called the dihydrogen monoxide hoax. I put a little picture of the compound here, or the chemical substance on the right. Dihydrogen monoxide is just a very overly sophisticated and complex word for water. Di being either the Greek or Latin, I don't really remember, for 2, hydrogen, and then monoxide, mono, for oxide. So you have 2 hydrogen and 1 oxide, which of course makes up water. So there's this whole hoax in the world of people have called into radio shows and said oh my God, the local reservoirs has a bunch of dihydrogen monoxide. Oh no. So I really enjoy questions like this. I really feel sorry for I didn't mean to take advantage of people when we put these out there, but it's still really, really fun for us. So you have, the answer is of course water. One interesting thing that I thought, just looking at people's answers, was that this is obviously a science question. You may argue it's one of the easiest science questions one could possibly ask, but it's neither here nor there. And a lot of people were don't care, don't know, oh no, all this kind of stuff, because it triggered something in their brain about it being a science question, and that just frustrated them, right? They're just like, I don't do science, I don't care about science, so just like, I'm not going to answer this, which I think one of the things for us to do and everybody to remember is that like there's certain categories out there that we can't just plow into every single quiz if we want to, and science is one of them. Science, math, fine arts, classical music, like all that kind of stuff, because people just kind of have an aversion to it. I can ask pop culture questions and current events questions till the cows come home, but when you ask a science question, you kind of like immediately people turn off for one reason or the other. So just something to keep in mind, only 95% or only 90%. So I don't know how many people just bailed out because it was science and how many people didn't pick up on the dihydrogen monoxide hoax. Question number 7, hogging space on wedding registries for 103 years, the H5 was the first model of what stand mixer brand? So it'd be really interesting to break this question down by age. I would imagine anybody who plays this game in their 20s or even younger, although we don't have too many users who haven't graduated or haven't been of college age, is that like if you have gone through the wedding cycle in your life in the last 100 years, or probably not 100 years, but we'll say 40 to 50 years, the stand mixer is a hallmark of all wedding registries you've seen, and because it is a hallmark of wedding registries, a lot of adult homes have stand mixers. If you don't know what one is, then you can go look at the next house that you go to, and there's a pretty good probability that if they are married, that they have one of these things. It's not only tied to marriage, but it kind of cheekily certainly is. So there are many brands of stand mixers. The most famous, and the answer to this question is, of course, KitchenAid. KitchenAid, I believe, was bought by Whirlpool or Westinghouse or something like that, but they've kept the brand, so it's not its own independent company. But 77% was pretty good. There were plenty of wrong guesses of companies, but I myself am a big fan of the stand mixer. I recently repaired my own, so my fiance is frustrated by that fact, but you know, that by how proud I am of that fact. But you know, hey, stand mixer is a hell of an appliance. Number 8, this is like one of my favorite, you know, amongst one of my favorite trivia questions of all time. Gulliver never traveled to a place called GeoCities, but a race of brutes in Jonathan Swift's Gulliver Travels did inspire the name of what exclamatory web services provider? So let's go back to, it must have been junior year, I guess, of high school, or sophomore year of high school, whenever I would have read Gulliver's Travels, the 4-part story by Jonathan Swift. Part 4, Gulliver ultimately ends up meeting a bunch of yahoos, a word that is completely made up by Swift. Now, when you read it, it's wild because the word Yahoo has kind of entered the vernacular in 2 ways. One, a description of some brutish individual or some sort of person not necessarily attached to refined society could be called a Yahoo, as well as, you know, Yahoo with an exclamation point being one of the most famous internet companies of all time. So 73% correct. Really happy to see it. I think exclamatory might have got some people. We got a lot of various websites as wrong answers. Easy ways to toggle difficulty up and down on these questions. You can be more specific about the story, the book. You can say less or more about the website. But just a really, really fun fact. And for those of you who have not read Gulliver's Travels, quite a good story. All right, question number 9. How many syllables are in the word Wednesday? So this is just like a classic mind screw question, which is that like, if I never asked you this question, you will know, like your brain knows how many syllables are in the word Wednesday. Like basically everybody does. It's kind of one of these things where like a kindergartner knows. Wednesday, like that's how you say Wednesday. And then the second you see the question asked, how many syllables are in the word Wednesday, your like test-taking brain takes over, right? And it's like, why is this question being asked to me? Is it something that I don't know? So this was actually our first multiple choice question that we've asked in the last, since the new format of the quiz. And so the multiple choice answers were 1, 2, 3, and 4. Functionally, I think the only 2 good answers would be 2 and 3. So when I say it out loud, Wednesday, or we want to like go back to elementary school when you do the clap, like Wednesday, it has 2 syllables, right? No doubt about it. There's nobody pronounces it Wednesday. It is simply a 2-syllable word. However, once again, I think a lot of people look at this question and they're like, like maybe I'm wrong, right? Like maybe I'm programmed incorrectly. And the reason that they're asking this as a trivia question is because I don't know the answer and I meant to look dumb. I believe my father, I was talking to him, I asked him how many syllables he put down for Wednesday, and he was like, oh, 3, right? He does not say Wednesday. It's just like one of these things where your mind just thinks differently about this. So I love questions like this. Some people hate them. I think John Paul, our quizmaster, was just like, this is a horrible idea. You should never do this. But I love it. Like, I love the idea of asking people things they know and making them produce it, right? Using the counter intuition of your test taking brain. So if you're watching this, or you're thinking about how our games work in the future, you should just know that we're gonna continue to take advantage of this as a bit of a phenomenon in the human mind. All right, question number 10. This was like the home run question. This is probably the best answer. This is probably the best question we've asked so far in the new format, although the newspaper question from a number of weeks ago was pretty good as well. February, don't put that in your mouth. According to Social Security data from 2021, what was the most popular baby name that shares a name with one of the 12 months of the year? So let's break this down a little bit more nuanced. So first of all, Social Security data is amazing for names over any sort of period of time. I love going to Social Security data because it is just fascinating, right? So the first thing you will see is that it's from 2021. Now, most people, when they think about name trivia, or they think about names in general, they kind of end up kind of tying themselves to their life or their peers. So the most common trivia questions we would usually ask about names is not about the past year, right? We would ask about the last century or the last 20 years or 30 years or whatever it may be. Because if people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, are taking the quiz, it's very unlikely that they would be in tune with like what's hot in baby names today. However, we take advantage of that, right? Like we can use the same set of data and put together something really interesting about teaching you something, right? So when the second that we toggle this from like a century level question or a 40-year question or whatever to a 1-year question, we have made this a very nuanced and esoteric point, but like I said, there's something to be taught. The second thing that's interesting about this question is it has limited correct answers, and we included a image of the 12 months of the year here. So technically, knowing that everyone who takes our game plays in English, there's only 12 correct answers that it could be. Now, what are the bad answers, right? And this was kind of like the hearkening to February. Don't put that in your mouth. Like February, March, July, September, and maybe somebody's name's September, October, November, December, like just aren't really people's names, right? Like it's just like not something that you would guess. So functionally, the options that you would have are January, April, May, June, and August. Which is awesome, right? Like it's like, here is a really, really fun, you have a 1 in 5 shot. So I thought I'd provide to you guys the relative frequency of answers that you can see down here in the lower left. And it's pretty awesome, right? Like you have almost 60% of people guessing April, followed by June, followed by May. And this is this phenomenon that you see, right? Like this is people saying, I know someone named April, I know someone named June, right? Like it's just like not that, it's not that difficult to understand like why someone would answer that. However, when you look at what happened in the last year, August not only is the most popular of the months, it's the most popular of the months by a very, very large margin. It was like thousands of children were named August, and only like a few hundred children were named April, May, or June in the US last year. So it's just interesting, right? Like it's like August is the correct answer. It's only 9% correct across our entire quiz taking community, but like this is you know, I don't use the word perfect, but it's like this is as close to like a perfect question as you're gonna get, right? Because you have a limited set of answers, so it's not unfair to anybody. It's germane and relevant to what's going on in the world. You take advantage of people like thinking through these things. Like there were I don't actually have videos of this, but I would imagine there would have been people at their desk being like, okay, like whatever, and then look at what you get, right? You get some people who are able to nail it, be it they cheated or they know people or they guessed or whatever it may be, and you see a whole bunch of people who systematically were unable to get it. So going back to what the stats ultimately end up for the week, That's why you see so few perfect 10s, right? Because at a 9% correct, and even where you don't see very many 9s, like that question was just gotten correctly by such a low percentage of people that just you wouldn't have ever expected someone to have the ability to produce that, which makes sense, right? Like that's, I almost like they shouldn't have the ability to produce that because of how difficult it is, and we're really taking advantage of a situation there. So that's this week's quiz, week 1 of June 2022. Once again, my name is Eli Robinson. I'm the Chief Trivia Officer here at Water Cooler Trivia. You should definitely check us out at watercoolertrivia.com. You can check me out on various platforms at Chief Trivia Officer, specifically TikTok. We have some fun trivia questions of the day that you have. If you have any comments, questions, would love to hear your opinion about too easy, too hard, what worked, what doesn't work. We'd love to hear it. And otherwise, have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.